This is Chapter 43 of Following the Equator. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Following the Equator by Mark Twain, Chapter 43. Murder Trial in Bombay. Confidence Swindlers. Some Specialties of India. The Plague, Juggernaut, Suttee, etc. Everything on gigantic scale. India first in everything. 80 states more custom houses than cats. Rich ground for Thug Society. Hunger is the handmaid of genius. Pudd'nhead Wilson's New Calendar. One day during our stay in Bombay there was a criminal trial of a most interesting sort, a terribly realistic chapter out of the Arabian Nights, a strange mixture of simplicities and pieties, and murderous practicalities, which brought back the forgotten days of Thuggee and made them live again; in fact, even made them believable. It was a case where a young girl had been assassinated for the sake of her trifling ornaments, things not worth a laborer's day's wages in America. This thing could have been done in many other countries, but hardly with the cold business-like depravity, absence of fear, absence of caution, destitution of the sense of horror, repentance, remorse, exhibited in this case. Elsewhere the murderer would have done his crime secretly, by night, and without witnesses. His fears would have allowed him no peace while the dead body was in his neighborhood. He would not have rested until he had gotten it safe out of the way and hidden as effectually as he could hide it. But this Indian murderer does his deed in the full light of day, cares nothing for the society of witnesses, is in no way incommoded by the presence of the corpse, takes his own time about disposing of it, and the whole party are so indifferent, so phlegmatic, that they take their regular sleep as if nothing was happening and no halters hanging over them. And these 5 bland people close the episode with a religious service. The thing reads like a Meadows Taylor thug tale of half a century ago, as may be seen by the official report of the trial. At the Mazagon Police Court yesterday, Superintendent Nolan again charged Tukaram Suntu Savatbaya, woman, her daughter Krishni, and Gopal Vithu Banaikar before Mr. Firoze Hosang Dastur, 4th Presidency Magistrate, under Sections 302 and 109 of the Code, with having, on the night of the 30th of December last, murdered a Hindu girl named Cassie, aged 12, by strangulation, in the room of a chawl at Jakaria Bunder, on the Surrey Road, and also with aiding and abetting each other in the commission of the offense. Mr. F. A. Little, public prosecutor, conducted the case on behalf of the Crown, the accused being undefended. Mr. Little applied under the provisions of the Criminal Procedure Code to tender pardon to one of the accused, Krishni, woman, aged 22, on her undertaking to make a true and full statement of facts under which the deceased girl Cassie was murdered. The magistrate having granted the public prosecutor's application, the accused Krishni went into the witness box, and on being examined by Mr. Little, made the following confession: I am a mill hand employed at the Jubilee Mill. I recollect the day, Tuesday, on which the body of the deceased Cassie was found. Previous to that I attended the mill for half a day, and then returned home at 3 in the afternoon, when I saw 5 persons in the house, viz., the first accused, Tukaram, who is my paramour, my mother, the second accused Baya, the accused Gopal, and 2 guests named Ramji Daji and Anaji Gungaram. Tukaram rented the room of the chawl situated at Jakaria Bunder Road from its owner, Girdarilal Radhakishan, and in that room I, my paramour Tukaram, and his younger brother, Yesso Mahadu, live. Since his arrival in Bombay from his native country, Yesso came and lived with us. When I returned from the mill on the afternoon of that day, I saw the 2 guests seated on a cot in the veranda, and a few minutes after the accused Gopal came and took his seat by their side, while I and my mother were seated inside the room. Tukaram, who had gone out to fetch some pan and betel nuts, on his return home had brought the 2 guests with him. After returning home he gave them pan supari. While they were eating it my mother came out of the room and inquired of one of the guests, Ramji, what had happened to his foot. when he replied that he had tried many remedies, but they had done him no good. My mother then took some rice in her hand and prophesied that the disease which Ramji was suffering from would not be cured until he returned to his native country. In the meantime the deceased Cassie came from the direction of an outhouse, and stood in front on the threshold of our room with a lota in her hand. Tookaram then told his two guests to leave the room, and they then went up the steps towards the quarry. After the guests had gone away, Tookaram seized the deceased, who had come into the room, and he afterwards put a waistband around her, and tied her to a post which supports a loft. After doing this, he pressed the girl's throat, and having tied her mouth with the dotur, now shown in court, fastened it to the post. Having killed the girl, Tookaram removed her gold head ornament and a gold putli, and also took charge of her lota. Besides these two ornaments, Cassie had on her person ear studs, a nose ring, some silver toe rings, two necklaces, a pair of silver anklets, and bracelets. Tookaram afterwards tried to remove the silver amulets, the ear studs, and the nose ring, but he failed in his attempt. While he was doing so, I, my mother, and Gopal were present. After removing the two gold ornaments, he handed them over to Gopal, who was at the time standing near me. When he killed Cassie, Tookaram threatened to strangle me also if I informed anyone of this. Gopal and myself were then standing at the door of our room, and we both were threatened by Tookaram. My mother, Baya, had seized the legs of the deceased at the time she was killed, and whilst she was being tied to the post. Cassie then made a noise. Tookaram and my mother took part in killing the girl. After the murder her body was wrapped up in a mattress and kept on the loft over the door of our room. When Cassie was strangled, the door of the room was fastened from the inside by Tookaram. This deed was committed shortly after my return home from work in the mill. Tookaram put the body of the deceased in the mattress, and after it was left on the loft, he went to have his head shaved by a barber named Sambu Ragu, who lives only one door away from me. My mother and myself then remained in the possession of the information. I was slapped and threatened by my paramour Tookaram, and that was the only reason why I did not inform anyone at that time. When I told Tookaram that I would give information of the occurrence, he slapped me. The accused, Gopal, was asked by Tookaram to go back to his room, and he did so, taking away with him the two gold ornaments and the lota. Yeso Mahadu, a brother-in-law of Tookaram, came to the house and asked Tookaram why he was washing, the water pipe being just opposite. Tookaram replied that he was washing his dotur, as a fowl had polluted it. About 6 o'clock of the evening of that day my mother gave me 3 pice and asked me to buy a cocoanut, and I gave the money to Yesu, who went and fetched a cocoanut and some betel leaves. When Yesu and others were in the room I was bathing, and after I finished my bath my mother took the cocoanut and the betel leaves from Yesu, and we 5 went to the sea. The party consisted of Tookaram, my mother, Yesu, Tookaram's younger brother, and myself. On reaching the seashore my mother made the offering to the sea, and prayed to be pardoned for what we had done. Before we went to the sea, someone came to inquire after the girl Cassie. The police and other people came to make these inquiries both before and after we left the house for the seashore. The police questioned my mother about the girl, and she replied that Cassie had come to her door but had left. The next day the police questioned Tookaram, and he too gave a similar reply. This was said the same night when the search was made for the girl. After the offering was made to the sea, we partook of the cocoanut and returned home, when my mother gave me some food. But Tookaram did not partake of any food that night. After dinner I and my mother slept inside the room, and Tookaram slept on a cot near his brother-in-law, Yesu Madahu, just outside the door. That was not the usual place where Tookaram slept. He usually slept inside the room. The body of the deceased remained on the loft when I went to sleep. The room in which we slept was locked, and I heard that my paramour Tookaram was restless outside. About 3 o'clock the following morning Tookaram knocked at the door, when both myself and my mother opened it. He then told me to go to the steps leading to the quarry and see if anyone was about. Those steps lead to a stable, through which we go to the quarry at the back of the compound. When I got to the steps I saw no one there. Tookaram asked me if anyone was there, and I replied that I could see no one about. He then took the body of the deceased from the loft